Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the 30th of October, 2023 Public Board meeting to order. I'd like to begin by acknowledging this meeting is taking place on unceded Algonquin homelands, and I'd like to thank the Algonquin nations for hosting this meeting on their land. I'd now like to ask if anyone has an interest to declare. If so, please do so now. Trustee Milburn.
Tonight, I am declaring a standing interest to be shown on all committee and board meetings moving forward. This is in relation to my employment with the City of Ottawa's Transportation Services Department, also known as OC Transpo. In order to avoid any actual or perceived conflicts of interest, I will be recusing myself from any discussions or decisions related to transportation funding or resources moving forward. My full declaration can be read on the district's website. I'd also like to thank the staff of the school board for helping me during this process for declaring this interest. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other interests to declare? Seeing none, I look to Vice Chair Scott for the in-camera board meeting.
Thank you. The board met this evening in committee of the whole in camera, and there were no recommendations arising from our meeting.
All right, thank you. I now look for a mover and a seconder to approve the agenda. Trustee Lee, seconded by Trustee Kaplan-Murphy. Does anyone have any changes or additions to the agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor of the agenda as presented. And that carries. I now move on to the presentation of the D. Aubrey Moody Award, and I'm going to head over to the podium. Swan, would you like to join us? Suwan, we are pleased to welcome you to our board meeting this evening to receive the D.A. Moody Award. Suwan is an excellent student and truly exemplifies the spirit of the D. Aubrey Moody Award. With an 8-course load in her final year at Corinne Wilson Secondary School, Suwan graduated with a GPA of 99.5. Congratulations. One of Swan's biggest beliefs is the importance of being open to new challenges and of exploring different pursuits outside of studying. While at Corinne Wilson Secondary School, Swan was involved in the newspaper club, where she spent a significant amount of her time as an editor, organizing tasks, planning deadlines, and writing articles. This was an amazing opportunity that she credits with helping her to improve her writing, collaboration, and leadership skills. Further, she values the experiences and friends that she has made while solving problems and working on projects together in the math, science, and programming clubs at her school. Swan is currently studying software engineering at the University of Ottawa. She hopes to continue and grow her positive experience with extracurriculars. Swan joined the UO Rover team at the university this year. In her free time, she enjoys reading, writing, and painting. You wanted to say a few words? Oh, no. Ellen, you're up next.
Thank you. Mr. Aubrey Moody was a resident of Nepean, and he was a farmer, but lifelong committed to the politics of the community and looking to make it a better place to live, and a devoted member of Bell's Corners United Church. And as he became older, he entrusted our church with a sum of money from which we should draw $200 each year to give to a deserving student, the student being the highest marks in the school board. And the parameter was that this money was to be used for having fun. So you're not supposed to spend it on books. Maybe you'd like to buy a new video game or something like that. Anyway, that was his understanding that we were to give this to the top student. And it's my pleasure to present this, Joanne, tonight and make her this year's winner of the D. Aubrey Moody Award. Congratulations.
I also wanted to say a few words of thank you for the honor of being able to be here tonight to celebrate this moment with my family. So I'd like to thank the Ottawa-Carleton District School Board and all of its representatives, as well as the Bells Corners United Church, and hearing what Helen just said, I'd like to pledge that I shall use this money for fun and not to buy any textbooks. So yeah, thank you, everybody.
Good evening. I have it on good authority that from Principal Andrew Murphy of Corrine Wilson Secondary School that Swan was a wonderful student. She supported younger students by tutoring them in math. She participated in food drives each year and even helped in the development and rollout of coding projects for D-Stream grade 9 science classes, all while achieving extraordinary marks in all of her classes. On behalf of the Ottawa-Carleton District School Board, congratulations on your amazing achievement, Swan, and we wish you every success this school year and beyond. Congratulations.
I'm now going to call on Monique Manach and Jody to present. So the mic only works if you hit the button.
Good evening. Thank you for having us, Miigwech. Jody Kahoko, in addition to cause Pikwakanagan and Dungiba. Hi, everyone. I'm Jody Kahoko. I'm an Algonquin from Pikwakanagan and also the Principal for Indigenous Education with the OCDSB.
Joshik, welcome. Welcome to unceded, unsurrendered Algonquin territory. Monique Manach and Dishnakos, Kittikanikanishnabek and Dochiba. My name is Monique Manach and I'm a member of the Algonquins of Barrier Lake and I'm the Indigenous Education Council Facilitator. Thank you.
Thanks, Monique. So just to start tonight, we'd like to share some of the things that we've been doing with the Indigenous Education Council. And one of the highlights from last year is we hosted the regional meeting for Indigenous Education Councils across the Eastern Ottawa region. So there were 12 boards that were in attendance. We worked together with Romaine Mitchell from the ministry to gather those folks together. And we were able to learn about each other, network, find out what others are doing, and to see how we're able to work together as Indigenous Education Councils across this part of the province. We did find that our board is one of the few that has terms of reference, and that we do have a facilitator or a chairperson, and that's Monique. Also, we did receive feedback. I received feedback just last week that other boards are looking at having regional meetings as well, based on what we found at our meetings. So you should know that our Indigenous Education Council with the OCDSB is one of the best in the province in leading.
So one of the two of the things that I'd like to discuss briefly that the IEC is doing is, first of all, we are in the process of developing two campaigns. One is to recruit community members to become a part of the Indigenous Education Council. And the other is recently the Special Education Advisory Committee had approved 2 representatives from the Indigenous community to sit as voting members. So we are in the process of developing that campaign as well to recruit 2 representatives to sit on the SEAC. Another item that we have been working towards, and of course you were aware, is the Urban Indigenous Trustee. The letter went out, I believe it was 2 years ago. We haven't had a response from the ministry. So we are moving forward with that as best we can. And of course, we'll be hoping for support from the Board of Trustees. I've had the opportunity to speak with the chair of the Indigenous Trustee Council, Elaine Johnson. And she spoke to me about how some of the steps that we can take to move forward. And one of those steps, and this is an area where we have had the financial director, Terry, come out and speak to us about the budget. However, what we need more clarification on is how the GSN, how that formula works. Elaine felt that this was important information that we needed to have. And I agree with her. And also because it impacts different school boards differently. For us, it was fairly positive, but for a school board, for example, in Sudbury, it created a negative impact. So we need to find out, how does this work and how would it impact the steps that we're taking to have this position created and change the legislation. She also spoke about how there had been a committee previous to this government that was consulted, and that when the government came in, the whole committee was closed. It's not the word she used, but it's the word I'll use. And so now there's no consultation going on with the Indigenous community at the provincial level. So the next steps for us are to determine the GSN funding formula, to look at what numbers we have. We need to know how many students we have. We are also looking at how to improve the self-identification of Indigenous families and students, so that we have a better understanding of how many families we have. And the other thing is, it's in my handwritten notes on the back of my paper. They're all over the place. Is to write another letter, have another letter sent to work with the Indigenous Trustee Council. Of course, they represent only First Nations and those with accredited or those with agreements. But to see how we can all work together to create this important position that would represent all Indigenous community in an urban setting, especially for a board like Ottawa that doesn't have the agreements. And the only other thing that I'd like to talk about briefly today, as part of our steps to create this position, there are some things we can do here at the board level. One of those would be to have an Algonquin elder, a knowledge keeper, open and close the meetings. And the second thing would be to have an Algonquin elder or knowledge keeper attend the meetings as in an advisory capacity. I think if we move forward taking those steps, I understand that, thank you, there has been Indigenous student trustee that motion has been passed, which I think is a wonderful step forward. And we will be recruiting for that. But in the meantime, as we are taking these steps to create this position, I think if we take these smaller steps first, by the time we make that ask, because I think it's going to be a lengthy process. We're looking a few years down the road to create this urban Indigenous trustee and have the legislation changed. But if we take these steps in the meantime, I think it would give us a good grounding and foundation to our, I don't want to say argument, but to the, I guess the argument to what we're putting forward to and why it's needed and what the impact is. So, questions?
Thank you both. I have a list of questions. I have Trustee Bell, Trustee Blackburn, Trustee Dixon. Trustee Bell.
Thank you so much, Monique and Jody, for the presentation and for letting us know what you're up to. A couple of questions for you, but also a question for staff. The question for you is, are there other ways where I believe we're going to pass a recommendation to send another letter to the province seeking approval tonight for an Indigenous trustee. So that's one way that we as a board can support that important initiative. Are there other ways? I know that trustees around the table have the ears of their MPPs quite often. So would advocacy of that sort be helpful as well? Or are there other ideas that you have? And then the second question I have is for staff. And the question is, with regard to the traditional knowledge keeper, could the Indigenous Education Council come with a formal recommendation to the board for that position? And we could then hopefully approve of that advisory position to sit in on not just the COW meetings, not just the committee of the whole meetings, but the actual board meetings as well. Those are my two questions, Chair. I'm not sure who should go first in answering.
I'm going to have the Indigenous Education Council go first.
Absolutely. If you have the ears of the MPPs for any advocacy would be very, very helpful. We do, and we do appreciate that. And also a formal recommendation for that advisory position is forthcoming.
A knowledge keeper or elder participating at the board table. Certainly something that we're happy to have a discussion with the superintendent and with IAC and the Indigenous team about. We'd need to give some thought to the logistics of that and the timelines for that, given that we've also got the letter going in terms of an Indigenous trustee. And so we'd want to make sure we were clear about if that was in perpetuity or if that was in the interim or what that was, so that we had a common expectation and common parameters, but we could achieve that through some discussion.
Trustee Bell, have your questions been answered?
Just to be crystal clear, our advisory committee, the Indigenous Education Council, can come forth with a recommendation to put on the table for our approval. Is that correct?
I don't believe your mic is on.
I think there's the difference between making a recommendation and can the board implement something, and we've not done enough review yet to say definitively, can the board implement that recommendation if it comes forward? But what we can do is start a conversation to better understand what the parameters would be.
Trustee Bell?
I guess my question is, does a trustee have to bring forth that recommendation, or can the IEC bring forth that? It's more of a technical question on what can be done by our advisory committees. Thanks.
Advisory committees are able to make recommendations to the board for their consideration.
All right. I'm seeing nodding, so I'm going to move along. Trustee Blackburn.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you. To Monique, it's nice to see you as always, and thank you for being here. And it's, I have to say, and I thank you again. I've learned a lot from you over the time I've known you. And I'm glad you're in touch with Elaine Johnson. I've known her for many, many years. And I'm also a graduate of the Rainbow District School Board, which is the school board up in Sudbury. So, and I have a question for you that is not a topic that you brought up, but it was a topic that was discussed amongst advisory committees and such in a few months ago. And I had put forward, and the motion didn't get debated at this table, but I had brought forward a motion in regards to our relationship with the Ottawa Police Service. And when I was a regular attender of the Indigenous committee, Albert Dumont who you know very, very well, was somebody I listened to over many, many evenings. And he said on more than one occasion in those meetings that if the relationship with the Ottawa Police Service is broken, the solution is not to end it, but to fix it. And from time to time, and being a member of a group myself that is often marginalized, there's a perception that if you belong to that group, you all think alike. I've never been a believer of that. And I don't believe that about the Indigenous community. In my opinion, I know many, many Indigenous people that I'm honored to call friends, and they don't agree on everything. But I do consider you a woman of wisdom. And so I would like for you to share your thoughts on how you see the OCDSB should proceed with a relationship with the Ottawa Police Service. And you probably are aware that under certain circumstances, principals are mandated by regulation and law to call in the police service. So your thoughts on that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you very much.
I'm going to cut in and say that I don't know what conversations have happened at IAC, and I know that you two don't speak on behalf of all of IAC, and so don't feel on the spot to defend or create any position on behalf of the committee. Otherwise, you have the
Madam
floor.
Chair, I believe if we replayed the tape, I asked for Ms. Menashe's opinion.
With respect, all conversation goes through the chair at a board.
Yes, and I apologize, and I think I did that at the beginning, and I consistently do that. Thank you.
I think we have had several discussions around the Ottawa Police Service. As you know, and as Albert has also stated, the relationship is broken. Many people in our community do not feel safe with the Ottawa Police Service. I think there needs to be conversation around repairing that relationship. What we have found in some cases since we've closed the schools to the police is that because of that, it causes something of a glitch sometimes when they are called. And there have been various examples about where children have suffered as a result of that. The relationship discussions have to be two-sided. There has to be reciprocity. So we can only say what we are willing to do. It's up to the Ottawa Police Service to come forward with what they are willing to do. There is a history that isn't easily forgotten, and there has to be an acknowledgement of that and an acknowledgement of how we can move forward. I don't know at what point the community would feel comfortable bringing the police service back into the schools. I don't know. That's not for me to say. These discussions have to happen within our community, and they have to happen with the police service. So, and we have to have it in a circle where it's not a hierarchical situation, but a conversational partnership. We as a community, I know, are willing to have conversations like that. So I think the ball may be in the court of the Ottawa Police Service to decide how they would like to approach repairing the relationship.
Through you, Madam Chair, thank you very much for that very wise answer.
All right, that takes us to Trustee Dixon.
Through you, Chair. I was just wondering if we can actually have a motion or a vote on the opening and closing our meeting with an elder.
So it's not on the agenda for tonight.
Okay.
We would need a motion from any trustee to bring it forward at the next committee of the whole.
Okay, so can we do that?
So if any trustee wants to write a motion, they would have to send an email to Nicole saying,
Okay.
I would like to have a vote on, and then they explain what they want to vote on, at least 10 days ahead of COW.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, trustee Scott?
Thank you, and thank you very much for bringing us your words this evening on behalf of IAC and on behalf of yourself and the whole community. We've had some very good discussions at IAC this last year or so, and one of the things that never fails to impress me are the different insights that the people participating at IAC are able to bring on some things which would otherwise appear very ordinary, and this is what we would expect, except that there is a different take on it depending on where you're coming from when you encounter any particular action. The one that struck me most recently was the response around in the bullying consultation around what it means when a letter comes home from school. And that's something that I would imagine that the Indigenous community is not the only group where that may bring mixed responses from the family when that letter arrives. Are there other kinds of issues on which you feel it would be very helpful to us and to the Indigenous community for IAC to be consulted on? In other words, what have we not done yet that we should be looking at?
Every single policy,
Every single policy.
all of the curriculum, all of the curriculum would have an Indigenous perspective, whether it's geography, science, history. Every single subject has an Indigenous perspective to it, which I think needs to be taught when we talk about reconciliation. For me, reconciliation is an outcome. It's an outcome based on truth. We have to focus on the truth. And until the truth of Indigenous history in Canada is normalized within society, and we do that by teaching the Indigenous perspective in all curriculum. And we do that by bringing the Indigenous perspective into all policies. Once that happens, reconciliation happens organically. So to say we're doing something for reconciliation, for me, is the cart before the horse. We do something to help bring the truth to light. And then what happens after that is the outcome, and that outcome. I have been so fortunate in that the people that I've met who, once they understand and realize the history of Indigenous people in Canada, I have yet to meet anyone who hasn't said, how do we fix this? It'll happen organically. So there is the perspective, the Indigenous perspective needs to be woven throughout everything we do. And in this territory, we begin with the Algonquin perspective, because this is the Algonquin territory.
Thank you very much.
Right. Seeing no other speakers, I want to thank you both coming profusely and for sharing your time and letting us know what's going on at IAC. So thank you both. That takes us to the briefing from the chair. So a reminder that the OCDSB Family Conference will be taking place this Saturday, November 4th at 8:30 to 1:30 at Brookfield High School. It will include a number of workshops on topics such as supports for English language learners, mental health and well-being, success in kindergarten, special education, and more. Some of these sessions will be available in multiple languages, including Arabic. This is a free event, and registration details can be found on our website at www.ocdsb.ca. Second, consultation regarding the new Finley Creek Elementary School began this month. Working groups will be formed and active in November, and the public consultation will be held in December. Finally, looking ahead to November, the annual board organizational meeting will be held on November, Tuesday, the 14th. At this meeting, the board will elect a chair, a vice chair, a chair of the budget committee, as well as all of its statutory, ad hoc, and committee appointments. The next committee of the whole meeting will be November 21st, which means if we want to add a motion, it would be 10 days before November 21st. And the board meeting for November will be on November 28th. Are there any questions about the chair's report? Seeing no questions, I'm going to take us to the director's report. Director?
Through you, Madam Chair. Good evening, everyone. Coming next month, we invite all grade 7 to 12 students and families to the All About High School virtual information session to be held on November 29th. This virtual event is a great opportunity to learn about subjects, programs, and other exciting aspects of secondary school. More details will be shared in upcoming parent and student updates. The Canadian Association of Communicators in Education's Bravo Awards program celebrates Canada's best education communications. On Sunday evening, I'm happy to share that the OCDSB communications team received 2 awards for their efforts in the 2022-2023 school year. I would like to congratulate our communications team, including Executive Officer Giroux and General Manager Bernari, and thank them for their hard work, creativity, and dedication on behalf of our organization. Friday, November 3rd is a professional activity day for OCDSB elementary school staff. This will focus on key ministry priorities, literacy and numeracy, curriculum implementation, student mental health and well-being. There will be no school for elementary students on this day. Finally, I did want to note that our schools will be learning and reflecting as we approach Indigenous Veterans Day on November 8th, as well as Remembrance Day on November 11th. As the 11th falls on a weekend, schools will be holding ceremonies during the week before this day. Here at the board office, we will also be marking Remembrance Day with a special ceremony on Friday, November 10th. Thank you.
Do we have any? I see Trustee Bell. Any other questions? All right, Trustee Bell.
Thank you very much. And my question is for the director. Given the ongoing and horrific violence and humanitarian crisis that we're seeing in the Middle East, I very much appreciated your remarks last week that students can reach out and seek support within our board if they're being impacted by that. My question is whether we have a sense of whether Palestinian and Israeli students have been reaching out for mental health and emotional support. And the coupled question with that is, what type of support are they receiving? I know often our human rights advisor, Carolyn Tanner, is in the room. Is she providing education and support to educators to deal with really hard and difficult conversations through a human rights-based lens? Again, what type of support are particularly Palestinian and Israeli students who are impacted by the crisis receiving? Thank you.
Director?
Through you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Trustee Bell, for a series of important and impactful questions. I'll begin by sharing that, yes, a number of student, staff, and school communities have reached out to our school administrators, to their teachers in classrooms, to central support, as well as to not only the director's office, but the Office of the Human Rights Equity Advisor. Over the past number of weeks, as a result of the conflict in the Middle East, we've been sharing with our school communities, predominantly through our school administrators, a series of guidance documents, including guidelines for discussing difficult or high-stakes topics, helping kids cope with media coverage and traumatic events, supporting conversations with students in the classroom and also in communities. So we have been reaching out. We know that our students and our staff have been asking. We are, even this Wednesday, tomorrow at Directors Executive Council, and then on Wednesday, we'll be sharing an updated document with our school administrators, because it is such a sensitive and challenging topic, and the nuances of that as we learn over time for additional supports as we evolve. I've also taken the opportunity to speak to a number of our community members, be it students or staff. I'm meeting with a number of employee groups, the Jewish employee group, the Muslim educators group, to hear their concerns, to try and provide supports as best we can as an organization. We recognize for Palestinian, Israeli, Jewish, Arab, Muslim communities, this is a challenging time, and its impacts them as deeply personal and painful in many instances. So all to say that a number of our students and staff our school communities are reaching out. We know we've got more support to do over time for our communities, and we're looking to, thanks to the efforts of staff, including our Human Rights Equity Advisor, provide guidance as some of the challenges, how we balance individual representation of identity, backgrounds, and beliefs with the importance of ensuring that it doesn't harm others in the process. So we're really trying to work on those nuances with as much guidance as we can get provincially, but also within our communities locally.
Okay. I think you're getting
Thank you
there,
very-
Pino. Sorry.
Thank you very much, Director, for your response. It's very much appreciated, the work that's going into supporting students in this hard time.
Okay. I see no further questions for the director, which means we will move along to delegations. There are no delegations this evening, which takes us to item 11, confirmation of board minutes. I now look for a mover and a seconder to confirm the board minutes of the 26th. I see Trustee Dixon, seconded by Trustee Jenkins. For the board minutes of the 26th of September and the 3rd of October 2023, are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, I'm going to call the vote. And that passes unanimously. Is there any business arising from the board minutes? Seeing none, we move on to matters for action. 13.1, receipt of committee reports. I look to the Vice Chair to present the report from the Committee of the Whole meeting of the 3rd of October. Trustee Scott.
Thank you. I would like to move receipt of the Committee of the Whole report from the 3rd of October.
And a seconder. Trustee Dixon. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none. All those in favor? And that carries. I'm going to introduce the recommendation from the, I'm going to introduce the recommendation from the committee report on a motion by Trustee Bell, which I will second. That doesn't seem like it should be me. Trustee Scott.
I think we've got a little bit of confusion here.
I need a seconder.
And
All right, a substitute mover.
So the recommendation is a motion by myself, so we will need a substitute mover for that.
Okay, Trustee Kaplan-Murphy. If you
Which I will second. The recommendation is that the position of Indigenous Student Trustee be created to take office effective 1 August 2024. That should be. It's for next year.
It should be 2024, yes.
Part B, that the Indigenous Student Trustee be elected directly by students identifying as Indigenous. Part C, that the Indigenous Education Council be involved in developing the necessary revisions to policy P.017.gov student trustees and any other relevant policies and procedures. And part D, that current student trustees, the Student Senate, and Indigenous students be consulted.
Is this a consent item? Seeing no opposition, I'll put that on the consent list. I now call on the Vice Chair to present the report from the Committee of the Whole meeting of the 17th of October.
And I will move receipt.
Seconder for receipt. Trustee Blackburn. Any errors or omissions? Seeing none. Oh, sorry, Trustee Nash.
Yes, it's, I believe it's in that report. I'm just going to pull it up, sorry.
No hurry.
Yes, it's on page 5. It's the second point on page 5, which reads as follows. An equitable recruitment and hiring policy was approved by the board in 2021 and was therefore not reflected in the 2023-27 strategic plan. and therefore was reflected? Because if it was, is that incorrect? that sentence? So it's page 5, the second point.
Okay, we're going to take a look at that and make sure that it reflects what was accurately said.
Okay, very good.
Are there any other errors or omissions? All right, can we approve this pending the one change that might need to be made? All in favor of approving it pending one possible change? And that passes. All right, I now look to Trustee Scott. Yes.
And we do have several recommendations, Madam Chair, beginning with a motion by Trustee Bell, which I will second, that a follow-up letter be sent to the Minister of Education requesting that the Ottawa-Carleton District School Board be allowed to appoint an urban Indigenous trustee.
All right, is this a consent item? Seeing no opposition, it's on the consent list. Trustee Scott?
And also on a motion by Trustee Bell, which I will second, that the 2023-2024 board work plan and areas of focus as outlined in Appendix A to Report 23-071 be approved as amended.
All right, is this a consent item? I'm seeing some no's, so we'll put that on the next list.
And that concludes my report.
All right. I now call on Trustee Milburn to present the report from the Ad Hoc Policy Committee meeting of the 19th of September 2023. My apologies.
I'd like to move receipt of the report from the Ad Hoc Policy Committee dated 19 September 2023.
Do we have a seconder? Trustee Dixon. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none. All those in favor of receipt? Okay, and that passes. Trustee Milburn.
I would like to move receipt of the report from the Ad Hoc Policy Committee dated 12 October 2023.
And a seconder? Trustee Blackburn. Any errors or omissions? Seeing none, all those in favor of receipt? And that carries. Trustee Milburn, any recommendations?
Yes, on a motion by Trustee Kaplan-Murphy, which I will second, that the revised policy P.107.SCO, new schools and other board facilities naming signage and opening ceremonies attached as Appendix B to Report 23-073 be approved.
Is this a consent item? Seeing no opposition, it's on the consent list. I now call on Trustee Aziz to present the notes from the Committee of the Whole meeting, 17th of October, 2023.
I'd like to move receipt of the notes from the Ad Hoc Advocacy Strategy Committee meeting of the 11th of October, 2023.
I have Committee of the Whole meeting from the 17th. Do I have the wrong? It's the 11th. My apologies. Okay, all those in favor of receipt? All right, are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none? All right, we call the vote. All those in favor of receipt, no errors or omissions? And that passes. That takes us to our non-consent items, which brings us back to... Oh. That is not on my script. Okay. Yes, we should vote on all the consent items. So we're going to have a recorded vote on all of the consent items that we have passed so far. So if you open up your eScribe, it should show you which ones are being voted on. Which? Yes. Okay. Yes, 2024. Still waiting on. All right. And that passes 11 in favor, none opposed, none abstaining, 1 absent. That takes us to our non-consent items. I now look back to Trustee Scott to introduce the motion. Oh no, it's seconded by you. It's introduced by Trustee Bell. Trustee Bell.
Chair, do I need to introduce the motion if it's a consent item?
It's not a consent item, it's the board work plan,
Oh, okay,
which
sorry,
was
I got
pulled off the consent list.
Not too much more to say except for I appreciate the work that has gone into revising the latest draft. I very much appreciate that environmental sustainability is now captured. And I think this board, many on this board have been quite vocal about accountability. And I think I'm looking forward to a discussion this evening about what better we can do to demonstrate that we are going to be accountable publicly and transparently for what we've set out to do. Thanks.
All right, I'm going to start a speakers list for this item. I see Trustee Milburn. Trustee Milburn.
So I have some follow-up questions to the discussion that we had at the committee of the whole meeting, specifically related to metrics. I see that under strategies and opportunities, we have said that we're going to develop metrics to support measurement and monitoring of strategic priorities to support student learning and well-being. I am concerned that it's not aligning. I'm concerned that we don't have the timelines of when we will have these metrics presented or a framework of when it will be coming back to committee of the whole or the board. It is causing me a lot of, I have a lot of questions about that. And I've heard from a few of my constituents that they are concerned as well, that this seems to be a plan that has a lot of love and that staff have worked so hard on, but we don't have a framework we'll be using to come back to the board meeting with. I would like staff to expand a little bit on what the plan is, report back to the public on this plan, please. Thank you.
Before you get started, I'm going to get you to replace your mic because it's cutting in and out.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to get someone to replace your mic because it's cutting in and out and the people online won't be able to hear you.
Okay.
So 90 seconds, don't leave your seats.
Chair, did you want a response while we're waiting? I think I heard the question.
Yeah.
The question, if I'm not mistaken, was an acknowledgement that developing metrics to support measurement and monitor strategic priorities is listed on the right-hand side of the work plan. But the trustee was looking for more information about timelines and how we might go about doing that. And so a couple of things. One, we are currently working on a new student achievement plan, and that will provide a framework for measurement of progress in student achievement. And you'll recall that this year, the ministry has provided some guidance documents in terms of math and literacy, and that's part of our math and literacy plan. So we know some of the data sets that will be used for measuring progress in there. So because we report on those data sets regularly. But when we bring forward the student achievement plan for you, you'll see more specificity in those learning targets and those metrics for specific areas. So that gets to student learning in the broader context. And that report we are hopeful to bring prior to the winter break. So you'll see that in the next couple of months. And that's the biggest piece. And there'll be an opportunity for us there to talk a little bit about data generally. We are also planning a trustee PD session on data, particularly equity in data. And so that will be useful. We're trying to position that. We've got January as a timeline in here. We're having some timing issues with the
You're cutting in and out.
Oh, sorry. We are just trying to confirm with the service provider January is possible for that. But the thinking of that was that training PD on using equity data was to help to inform the conversation when we bring back the roadmap and some of the other pieces. And so all that to say is you're going to see a series of reports where we can go deeper and look at the metrics. The other piece that the trustee is interested in is what do the formal reporting or sort of report cards or scorecards kind of look like? And we don't have in public education the kind of scorecard that's legislated in place in the municipal sector. but we've been thinking about what could a sort of interim reporting look like. And that's a piece that we'll bring forward a report. Probably it will be in the new year that will give us more of a measurement framework overall. And trustees will have an opportunity to talk a little bit about that when we bring forward the report on the previous strat plan. So that's coming, and that's got a mix of quantitative and qualitative data. And you'll be able to look at that and talk a little bit more specifically. It's a bit challenging in that one because it was COVID era, but you'll be able to look at that and say, I like these kind of metrics. I'm looking for more this way. I'm looking for more that way. And that will inform then the final plan for our metrics approach for this plan.
Trustee Milburn.
Is this on? Okay. Okay, so I appreciate the explanation for when we are planning on hearing about a few more metrics given the plan. Is there a reason that we have not committed in this work plan under the metrics that we will be coming back to, for an example, the committee of the whole every 2 months? Is it going to be a lot for staff? Is it not a realistic timeline, just using an example?
No, actually, and maybe some lack of clarity on my part. We did, as you know, in the last strategic plan, report regularly to committee of the whole, and we're looking at doing something similar. We're just setting up that what that reporting piece will look like. So that is in our work plan, and we'll see that scheduled on the committee agendas as a regular conversation. What we're trying to do is figure out the best way to chunk that out.
Okay, so just to confirm, this will be coming back as measuring the metrics to the committee of the whole meeting. Can we expect it every 2 months? Is the schedule still being worked on?
Absolutely. So we definitely can talk about updates on the plan on a regular basis, and some of those conversations will be metrics. I think we have to remember that some of the metrics, a lot of the metrics are only generated annually. And so, you know, we've got some, in some cases where we have more fulsome reports where we go in depth all at once. We can't, as an example, report on student achievement on a monthly basis. The data just doesn't work that way when you roll up at a macro level.
Trustee Milburn, anything further?
I will be asking many follow-up questions at each of the committee of the whole meetings to see the metrics. I'm very curious to see our student progress and how we are achieving the wonderful work plan put out in front of us. Thank you, staff, for indulging me with more questions.
All right. Are there any further questions, comments? Director.
Through you, Madam Chair, I appreciate Trustee Milburn's comments, and staff will endeavor to bring forward those reports with associated metrics in as timely a manner as possible. As Executive Officer Giroux mentioned, some depend on the frequency of when provincially driven measurements take place, but staff has understood the spirit of the valuable questions asked, and we'll bring that forward in as timely a manner as possible.
So what I have heard is that you're going to get metrics as we can, but not things like graduation rates in January. Okay, so if there's no other comments, that's going to take us to the vote. All those in favor of the board work plan and areas of focus?
I have no closing remarks. Thank you very much, Chair.
All right, so we're going to e-scribe this vote. So you're going to have to open your e-scribe. And that carries 11 in favor, none opposed, none abstaining, 1 absent. That takes us to 14.1, report from OBSPA. I look to Trustee Scott or Jenkins.
Just one reminder, the OBSPA Advocacy Day will take place on November 27th at Queen's Park. OPSPA representatives from across Ontario will be meeting with ministers and MPPs.
Trustee Scott?
And one other thing, and that is there is a meeting of the Eastern Regional Council of OPSPA in Gananoque on the 4th of November. And I hope that there will be some of our board members attending, although it is in fierce competition, undoubtedly, with the parent conference, where many people may already have committed. And I hope there is a good turnout of trustees for the parent conference too. I will definitely be attending in Gananoque.
Trustee Bell? Is that a vestigial hand?
It's a point of order, Chair.
Okay.
I don't think that we voted on the approval of the letter requesting the appointment of an urban Indigenous trustee, but if someone could confirm that for me, I'd be very much appreciated.
I believe it was put on the consent agenda when nobody opposed to it, and I'm looking to Manager Guthrie, and she is nodding. So I think it was put on the consent agenda.
Just to clarify, in the e-scribe vote, there was I could only see the part on the Indigenous student trustee. I did not see a reference to the Indigenous urban trustee letter.
I'm being told you would have had to scroll all the way down to see it, and I'm seeing nodding from other people that it was there.
Thank you for that clarification.
Okay. All right. That takes us to 14.2, OSTA update. Trustee Lee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. OSTA continues to make good progress in hiring and recruiting new drivers and making progress. OSTA is now committed to making regular public updates on their website on the 15th and 30th of every month. So being the 30th, update was provided today. We are currently down to about 40 drivers short to complete the system. One thing that was done in the OSTA board meeting last week was approval of an updated budget in which we evaluated some community requests regarding compensation, and in a message also posted to the OSTA website, details were provided in there on the rationales for us not being able to provide compensation to parents.
Are there any questions? I see Trustee Scott.
Thank you very much for the update. As I'm sure board members are well aware, this is a very big concern in the Western rural area, particularly because although there has been substantial improvement in the number of bus runs that have been restored, there are still nearly 20 where there is no service and where there has not been any service since the beginning of the school year. I understand that at one of the secondary schools in my zone, there are several hundred students whose attendance is, to put it mildly, somewhat sporadic because of the challenges of transportation, particularly because many of those students have to go a considerable distance to get to school. So through you, I would like to ask staff whether any additional support is being provided for those students, because right now I know we don't have necessarily Google Classroom materials and things like that that are being updated every day. Is there anything we can do to improve the resources available so those students don't get behind?
I'm going to check if there's any other OSTA questions first, and we'll answer that question in updates.
It ties directly to OSTA, Madam Chair, because it's a result of the bus cancellations that those kids are not getting to school.
It does, but it's not a question for Trustee Lee. Are there any other questions for Trustee Lee? And then we'll take this. Seeing none, staff, director.
Through you, Madam Chair, I appreciate the questions coming from Vice Chair Scott. I do know a couple of points. One is the opportunity for utilization of the Google Classroom, most certainly where and when it's feasible is one example. I'm going to turn over momentarily to Associate Director Reynolds for any additional commentary from a sort of a school specific perspective. The other point I did want to make this evening is just the work of the subcommittee to generate solutions. I know tie to the transportation issues predominantly, but that staff will have an eye to any of the suggestions brought forward through that subcommittee as well that may apply to other contexts such as the classroom for our consideration. So most certainly we'll look at that, and I'll turn it over to the Associate Director.
Great, thank you. And through you, Chair, as you know, we've been working very closely with the principals of those schools, and the superintendents, particularly the rural schools, are monitoring. We're taking a look at attendance patterns to see if there are individuals who are more consistently unable to attend for reasons specific to transportation disruption. As you know, or you may know, we're not in a position to compel staff to use Google Classroom and update it on a regular basis, but we certainly have worked with our federations and spoken with staff and have strongly encouraged that they do so. And to the best of my knowledge, many, if not most of the teachers who have, significant numbers of students impacted are doing their best to maintain the system as well. Cutting in and out.
No, you're gone.
Is it? But I'll follow up with our business learning technologies department to see what the more recent attendance data is indicating, as well as the superintendents of the rural schools to see if they've become aware of any more, more significant or egregious concerns as the time continues to move on. So thank you for raising it.
Trustee Scott?
Thank you.
Okay. That takes us to matters for information. Are there any other matters for information? Seeing none. Information and new business. Is there any new business? And seeing none, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for coming.